Winning. I've outsmarted you on a number of levels. Beta. Well, actually, King's not. Beta.
That was a hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck.
Keep your mouth shut. I'm going to go in there and slap your face.
You know, we're going to rise like the Phoenix. And
Get in my limousine. Ride on 85. Get in my Learjet. Woo!
Welcome to the Asterisk Conclusion Podcast. You're here with the King himself. I'm joined by our NFL expert, the Grizz.
Woo.
How are you doing, Grizz?
It's draft time. I'm happy.
It's
right.
like
Christmas and my birthday and every single holiday wrapped up in one.
That's right. Happy birthday, Grizz.
That's right.
Yeah,
happy NFL draft.
Well, we have our NFL draft special. This will be part one of maybe two, maybe even three. We'll see how quickly we can get through it. We're going to show our viewers a mock draft and give our opinions and like our takes on what the league should do.
Yeah, I mean, people, they know I've been into this for years. I just love to mock, and it's impossible to project and really know where these people are going to get drafted. You don't really have the inside scoop. I like to do it just to get a sense of value, because if you really like football and you care about what your team is doing, you don't want your team drafting the Mitch Trubisky's and the RG3 type players. You want to know what kind of value your team is getting. So it's fun to project and just fantasize, like act like you think you're a GM. And for years I always said I think for sure I could probably guide these teams a little bit better than some of these bad organizations. I mean, some of these picks are just awful. And this draft is interesting, and going through my mock draft this year, I think there's going to be a lot of shakeups. There's going to be a lot of trades. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
No, I agree. Well, let's kick things off. I mean, Carolina Panthers are on the clock. Let's get into it.
Yeah, this has been awesome because, if you got ESPN and NFL Network, Mel Kiper and Todd McShay are going at it, and you got Christian Mortensen getting in on it and dropping knowledge on those two. I mean, 2 weeks ago, it was C.J. Stroud, and now the rumor is that they like Bryce Young. And then the media about a couple of days ago was talking about, Anthony Richardson. So I think I heard that your new coach, Frank Reich, loves Stroud. He wants a big, strong, type of quarterback, physical specimen. And Bryce Young is definitely not that, but it sounds like there's a disconnect, and this could cause a lot of problems in the organization, especially a fresh new organization, if the coach and the coaching staff and the management and the ownership are not on the same page. So a lot of dynamic things to be worked out here.
No, I agree. Tepper, the owner, has been chasing a quarterback for years now, just in a very illogical way. This will be his first round quarterback he's drafted to solve the QB issue at Carolina. I'm not sure if you've mentioned, but are you saying you're going with Bryce Young as the first overall pick?
Like I said, I'll probably do 2 to 3 more mock drafts as I hear things, because, you do pay attention to rumors. There is a lot of smoke, but if I had to put my bottom dollar on it right now, from what I've heard in the media, it's it sounds like right now it's going to be Bryce Young.
That is a hot take. I like it. And I'm actually pulling for Bryce Young in this. I know there's been some concerns over size issues with him, but I think if you strip away size from all the quarterbacks and just go off talent and production, it's kind of hard to beat Bryce Young. But I can certainly understand why there are concerns because of his size.
I think he's a small quarterback, and this is one thing they haven't talked about, which I think is probably at least a minimum top 5 biggest attribute for a decent quarterback. It's hand size. You hadn't heard of that. He's got small hands and that he's slow. So I think he's kind of a blend of Russell Wilson and Kyle Murray. And I think you can thrive in his size and be just fine, but you got to have players around him. Will he ever be elite? I don't think he'll ever be top 5. I highly doubt that. but I think you can still win with him, and you can have a good team around him, and be a good a good caliber playoff team every year. I mean, I could see them being good in a few years with Bryce, but with like C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson or Levis, I think they're a much higher risk.
Gotcha. Well, no, I mean, I agree. I think, yeah, Bryce Young will be, I think, the safer pick. Like you say, his ceiling might not be as high as the others, but I think his floor is much higher also.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be terrible.
No. Well, let's move on to the second pick then. The Houston Texans. They're also looking for a QB. What are your thoughts on that?
That's really weird because I know they're dialed in on Bryce Young, and we kind of talked about this, like Carolina possibly trading again. I wouldn't be shocked to see them swap. I'm saying it right now. Don't be surprised if Houston and Carolina swap, and it's just for a few French fries here and there. Like maybe Carolina gets back another second or third or something.
Yeah.
Because Houston, I don't know what they haven't really opened their mouth and said a whole lot yet. But I do think they want Bryce, and if Carolina doesn't really, if they might as well get something back. But I think if it stands right now, I think Houston will stand at 2 and take Stroud. And we talked a little bit about him in the past. I don't know what he is, and I mean, going into the year, I didn't even have him ranked as a top 10 quarterback coming into this draft. And I'm not saying he can't be good. He looked great at certain times at Ohio State, especially against Georgia. And that he was prime time. He killed it. But you look at the talent level we talked about before. Look his running backs are outstanding. His offensive line's the best in the country. His wide receivers are the best in the country. How will that translate into the pros? Because I can guarantee you, no matter what team he goes to in the pros, he's not going to have that level of talent, and he's going to be under a lot more. The pass rush and his protection is just not going to be as good. I don't know I really don't know how mobile he is. I don't think he's a bad athlete, but I never got exposed in college.
No, he was protected pretty well. And like you were saying about his receivers, I think his receivers I think there are some NFL teams that would have swapped receiving cores with Ohio State. And I mean that. I know the Panthers would.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I was actually doing a study in the last 30 years of NFL draft picks, a lot of positions. And the number one position I was just struck with was Ohio State wide receivers. They have got so many they've got like 20 wide receivers that are just all pro. Like in the last few years, it's just amazing how many. I think like the Terry Glenns, you got what's the name? The guy who played Seattle, that Joey Galloway. They just got so many players like that. You just forget they're unbelievable. And they got Najigba coming out this year. They had Wilson Olave last year. And the best one out of the bunch is Marvin Harrison, who's going to come out. He'll be a top 5 guaranteed next year, maybe even top 3.
He's so nasty. Yeah, he's might be the best. Yeah, he's probably the best one out of them all. And I mean, you also had guys like Scary Terry out of Washington from
the list goes on and on and on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they're nuts. So I mean, you kind of have to go C.J. Stroud, in my opinion, with Bryce Young off the board if you're the Texans. But man, like you have to you just kind of hope that he's more of a passer. His passing prowess wasn't a result of the talent around him.
And I was trying to do a comparison of him, and it was really hard for me. But I was trying to think a line of these guys who've gone high. I just don't see him really doing great in his NFL career. He'll make some money and be around a while, but I was kind of thinking of he's not like David Carr or Carson Palmer, but I kind of see him having a similar career path because if he gets drafted by the Houston Texans, I mean, good luck.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the number 3 pick. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a trade alert on going on.
I think that it's already been advertised, and that's been known for a while. The Arizona Cardinals want out of that pick. It sounds like they're going to stick with Kyle Murray for another year or two. They paid the guy. That's a real funny organization right now. They've always had some weird issues, but if they have their quarterback, they know that the Colts want a quarterback, and it may not be the Colts, but I can guarantee you, I think there's a 75-80% chance the Cardinals will move down. And I do
You there?
back one or two places. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just kind of figured it out for a
Oh,
second.
sorry. I think that I was originally thinking the Colts wanted Anthony Richardson. That still could be the case. And that's just one of those things you don't know. I can't tell you. I mean, even when the day of the draft, I couldn't tell you if they like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson for. But right now, it sounds like Will Levis is one of the guys that teams are talking about. That's just a toss up to me. So I have the Indianapolis Colts trading up for Will Levis, and then Arizona keeping the fourth pick and taking Will Anderson, the defensive end outside linebacker from Alabama.
Whew, those are two Wills right there going off the board. Will Levis, I mean, he looks the part. He's big, strong, athletic, arm, can make all the throws. I didn't really like the production his last season at Kentucky. I watched a few games and it was just some decision making that I was just like, what are you doing out there? And that's not what I want to see out of like a top five pick, when you're in the NFL draft. But I mean, QB's a valuable position, and the Colts are fiending for one. They're desperate.
He's got that Mitch Trubisky, Zach Wilson kind of thing. He's very, he's very into social media, and he's a specimen. And I kind of have him physical. I think if I was going to compare his pro career and what I think he'll do, it would be something along the lines of like Kirk Cousins, possibly. I just don't know what he is. He's a really hard read. A lot of scouts, a lot of people love him, and some don't. I mean, a lot of people are comparing him to kind of Brady Quinn, that physique that he has, and he's into bodybuilding. They think he's just too big, and they say his range of movement is not so good as throwing motion because he is. So I've heard a lot of people, good and bad, and I've heard that he's deterred a lot of teams in his interviews. So, and Richardson's his ceiling is, you've heard so many great things about him, but like again, Will Levis's tape versus Anthony Richardson's, who's he going to take? That's a toss up.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to pick between those two, I'd probably go with Will Levis, but I mean Richardson's even a bigger athlete, so I don't know. But you also mentioned Cardinals taking Will Anderson Jr., the insane pass rusher from Bama.
Yeah, I've heard some rave reviews about him, and I thought he was too small. But then look at some of these new modern age pass rushers, and the report I read of him in the scouting, they said he was so aggressive in practice. This is Alabama. This isn't like playing North Carolina State or UNC. Like, he would just run over the Alabama players and the offensive linemen. He's just so strong and practices so hard.
Mm-hmm.
They say he's unstoppable. His motor is he's just tenacious. But I have him compared. I think he's a blend of Hassan Reddick from the Eagles, that outside linebacker there. He's about 240 and about 6'1", 6'2", and I have him a blend between him and Khalil Mack. He's got if you look at his workout combine numbers, he's very similar to Khalil Mack, almost identical. He's just about 10 pounds lighter than Khalil Mack and about an inch shorter. But I think he's going to have a similar impact too. If you put him on a team that has got a decent defense and cut him loose, he can wreak havoc.
No, I agree, and I agree with your comparisons. He's going to be fierce pass rusher off the edge of whatever team he goes to. I think he's going to be. I mean, he's the top defensive player off the board in this year's draft. That's for certain. I don't think.
Well, he's definitely the cleanest. As we'll get to our next pick.
Yes. Let's skip ahead to number 5, Seattle Seahawks. Pick from the Denver Broncos. Who you got taken? Who you have them taken at this pick?
Yeah. So this is the most controversial player in this year's draft, is Jalen Carter. I don't want to get into the off-field issues, but there's off-field concerns and issues which we could address. But who cares? We've read about it. We know what's going on. But I've heard people say he's a generational talent. He also plays at Georgia. We had the off-field concerns. I've heard the practices, he's lazy. So there's a whole lot of things. There's some red flags. But when I watch the tape, I mean, he is the best 3 technique in the draft. he's kind of like a bull in a china shop. You can't move him around, and he's going to get penetration. And I think if you have somebody next to him that's good, I mean, he's a plug and play guy. Is he going to be all pro? I'm not going to say that. I have him compared to Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox has had a good career. I think Fletcher Cox came out of Mississippi State. He's a defensive tackle for the Eagles. I think Jalen Carter, if his head's screwed on right and he's focused, I think he is an all-pro defensive tackle. But defensive tackles, I think, are one of the hardest positions from college to pros to really translate. So we'll see how it goes. But I do have him going to Seattle. I think that's a good place for him. I think Pete Carroll can coach him up, and he'll do just fine there.
Well, hopefully. My concerns are not so much with like the legal issues with Jalen Carter. I know that's still a concern, but I think it was like Georgia's pro day. He showed up like out of shape, just didn't wow people. It was his moment to like just say, "Hey, this is why I should be going number 1 overall." And he let everything down, let himself down during that process. I don't want a player that doesn't take football in this game seriously. I mean, I think you're right. I think he's going to go still in the top 10 somewhere. But I'm real strong character issue concerns with Jalen Carter, and I've never even met the guy.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, you're going ball for what we're reading here. And this is the kind of player that we've seen in the past, like the Warren Sapps or the Larry Tunzels. They're not, I mean, as far as we know, he didn't have any drug issues or anything, but this is the kind of guy. Every year, there's 1 or 2 guys that you think is going to go top 10 guaranteed, and they go to end of round 1 or the beginning of round 2 or something. So, I mean, he's a really talented person. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he fell out of the top 15, but it really depends on what the ceiling is and how teams feel about him. Is he that good?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, let's skip to number 6. The Detroit Lions. They got this pick from the LA Rams, part of the Stafford trade.
Yep, that's a big move. The Detroit Lions are looking really good right now.
Yeah, they're a team on the rise. They're looking pretty sexy. Who you got going at number 6 with them?
This is where I think the draft kind of really starts in terms of like you get away from the quarterbacks for a large part. You got the top 2 guys, I think, off the board that really are the best skill position players. And they could go so many different directions. They still have a lot of needs. I've heard a lot of Lions fans say they want to get that running back out of Texas. I'm like, why in the world? Which it sounds like the Lions are just kind of done with Swift, which I don't really get, because they also just signed Montgomery. But I mean, this Texas running back is really good. That's another player I'm having a hard time projecting. But like a lot of scouts and Mel Kiper saying, don't pick a running back round 1. So I think that value may hurt Robinson no matter how good he is. But I have Miles Murphy from Clemson, the defensive end there right now, because I look at him and his tape. He's just a big man. He's like 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", like 280. I think he ran a 4.5 in his pro day. And that's really nothing but help his stock. He just gets solid pressure. He can play the run. I don't think he's got like a real striking weakness. He's just a solid 4.3 defensive end, and I think he's the best one in this class. I wouldn't be surprised to see him being probably the best defensive player if he was putting the right team out of this class. Honestly, in looking at this, I don't know if he'll go that high. I think he could, but he didn't do the NFL Combine. So again, that's kind of hard to figure out. I do also like his teammate, the defensive tackle out of Brian Breesy. He's good as well. So these two, they may go closer together, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Miles Murphy go between 10 and 20. But I just like him a lot. And I have him compared to Robert Mathis, the retired Indianapolis Colt. And a lot of people I've read about have him compared to Chubb that is now with the Dolphins. So those are pretty good comparisons.
I think Miles Murphy is I think he's like one of the safer picks for like the defensive line. You're just going to get good production. Will he be the greatest defensive end in the league? I don't think so, but I don't think I think you're going to get like 10, 11 sacks a year from him, which is I think that's good. I'll take that any day of the week. So taking Miles Murphy here for Detroit would be another great pick. Pair him up with Aiden from Michigan on the other side. You actually would have a very scary pass rush there.
That's what I was thinking about too. It's like they got him and they could get a defensive tackle. They have a real glaring weakness in the middle, but you get both. You got two edge guys wrapped up for the next 5-6 years, and then they can get a free agent or draft another tackle. And all of a sudden, the Lions could be. I want to see what they're going to do because in the past they're famous for drafting a lot of cornerbacks and wide receivers, and a lot of players are just wasted. But it sounds like they're starting to address the team from the right areas. I have heard some rumors that they're really interested in getting a quarterback too. I don't think they look at Jared Goff as a long-term solution. So that might be. Don't be shocked to see number 6, the Detroit Lions, call Will Levis or Anthony Richardson's name.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with Goff, and I agree, I don't think he's a great quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. But if the Detroit Lions keep putting really good pieces around him, they could even draft a receiver here if they want.
Yeah, I've heard that too. So they got a lot. But the Detroit Lions are just, their history has proved to be all over the place, and they have not had a lot of success recently. So, from a Bears fan, if they keep on drafting linemen and making that team tough through the trenches, that's what you don't want to see because, I didn't think Goff was going to be any good there. And I think the coaching there has been fabulous. So they have a system in place and, see if they continue to grow. Who knows?
I agree. Well, let's move on to number 7, the Raiders. Who's on your mind that they're going to take there?
This can go many ways too. I do think Paris Johnson Jr., the offensive tackle, and he's a left tackle, and he will be a left tackle in the pros, is the number 1 offensive tackle, offensive lineman in the draft. That's my opinion. And the Raiders were awful last year in pass protection, and I think it's a large reason why Carr wanted to leave. He's just been shell shocked, and they got a new quarterback there, and they got some pretty good skill. Devontae Adams and Jacobs there. So if you want to protect your investments and maybe get a quarterback next year, I think he is a really good fit there. You have to remember the Raiders also let go of Alex Leatherwood from Alabama, that offensive tackle. He's only there for about a year, so they wasted that pick. Yeah. So they need a tackle bad. Paris Johnson Jr. is about 6'6", 6'7", about 320. He moves really well. I haven't compared to his old Ohio State partner, Orlando Pace. I just think Pace had a little bit more size and strength and a bigger base in his legs. But Paris Johnson can really cover the edge there. He's got long arms. He's pretty nimble. And I think he's a plug-and-play left tackle. And left tackles are premium in the NFL.
No, you're right. He would be a great pick by the Raiders. I agree. They brought in Jimmy G, who's a fine quarterback, but he's not the future of the Raiders. That's for certain.
No.
My question is, would they, if Anthony Richardson or Levis is there at 7, would they go quarterback and maybe?
I've heard rumors they want quarterback too, but there's only 4 of them. Really, I've also heard the Tennessee quarterback Hooker, I think it's his name, getting thrown in there to be drafted in round 1. I just can't see that happening. But there might be a really terrible quarterback selection somewhere in the first round. Don't be surprised.
Oh no, but the safer pick for the Raiders would be going with Paris Johnson. I agree, and then maybe setting themselves up for a QB selection of some sort next year.
Yeah, next year's class is nice, as we know.
Yeah, I agree. Number 8, Atlanta Falcons. Who you got going to them, the Dirty Birds?
Another Ohio State guy. You said these guys are amazing. We got Jackson Smith, Nick Jigba there. And I've heard Olave and Wilson say that they've even stated they think he's better than them. And I heard Steve Smith, the old Carolina Panthers receiver, say that he runs the best route in the draft class. He's just very smooth. But he's had some history of injuries at Ohio State. But when he plays sometimes, he's just had some monster games. And I don't know if that's talent, the system, but I don't really like this wide receiver class. I've heard some people say it's pretty deep, but they don't have like a pure stud. And I think he is probably the safer of the bunch. And I think that
Mhm.
puts his value up a little bit higher. And that's why I think he's going to go top 10. I think in most drafts, he wouldn't be a top 10. He's probably more like a 15 to 20. But I do think he'll have a pretty decent career because most Ohio State receivers do have pretty decent careers in the pros.
No, you're right. I mean, it's a safe pick also at receiver. Yeah, Ohio State guys, I mean, minus, quarterback, usually do really well in the pros. I'll say that.
And
Yeah,
they need somebody to pair with London there. I think actually he had a better career or a better rookie season than I thought he would last year. Drake London from USC, he
yeah.
did pretty well.
What was it? I think I read somewhere where they're going with their rookie. Well, it'd be a second year quarterback, but the rookie from last year, Ritter from
Yeah,
Cincinnati. That
yeah,
he's
yeah,
gonna
we'll
be,
see how that goes.
yeah, like they're gonna let him ride with him next year. And to be honest, that's smart because give
What do you
him
have to
another.
lose?
Yeah, give him a receiver, another receiver with London, and let him see how he does. If Ritter shows out and is a stud, well, great. Mazel tov. If he blows, guess what? You're going to be in a position to draft one of these awesome quarterbacks next year.
I mean, I think Atlanta Falcons were kind of a sneaky team. They're not incredibly talented, but it seems like the team is behind the coaching staff. They're kind of hard nosed. They're young, and I think they're kind of in my opinion, going to be an interesting team to see this year because that division looks like crap on paper, but it may surprise you.
Oh yeah. Well, let's get to number 9. Trade alert on this. It is the Chicago Bears pick, but you have them trading down. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I was looking at this because, like I said, I don't think Anthony Richardson or Levis will last that long.
Mhm.
But in my mock draft here, Richardson is still there. And so I looked at all the teams that still need a quarterback. Philadelphia is not drafting a quarterback. Tennessee possibly could, but I don't know what they're willing to give up because it depends if it's Levis or Richardson. Because I think that's why I started. That's why I put Levis over Richardson. I think Will Levis kind of fits more systems right now. I think he's a team that he's a guy who could play now or sooner rather than Richardson. I think Richardson's going to need about another year or two of the bench.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
this is my opinion, and I don't. I mean, maybe the Texans are going to already take a quarterback with Stroud or Young. The Jets will not take a quarterback because their rumor is they're going to get Rodgers during draft day. The Patriots, maybe. I heard that they're looking to trade Matt Jones there, so that's. I mean, this draft's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Then the Packers, who knows what the Packers are going to do, especially Rodgers being gone. And then, so I have them trading with the Washington Commanders
Mhm.
at number 16. So the Redskins / Washington Commanders will get the number 9 pick. And then I have them taking Anthony Richardson, who seems to me like the kind of player I think Washington would kind of like a little bit reminiscent of RG3 and Anthony Richardson is a big, tall Cam Newton kind of prospect, but I don't know if his career will be that way. Like he reminds me a lot of Cam. He's actually more athletic than Cam, runs faster, but it kind of reminds me if they did draft him, I wonder if he'd have a career similar to something like Jason Campbell, if you remember him way back.
I do. I remember him, old Auburn quarterback.
It's
Uh,
all over the place.
yeah. I mean, Richardson, well, whether it's like Richardson or Levis, whoever the fourth quarterback is, I kind of can see that as well. They're going to be teams wanting to move up uh, and grab that fourth guy, whoever that might be. It could be Washington. It could even be Green Bay. It could be the Patriots. The Titans teams, we're just naming stuff. People that are desperate for quarterbacks right now. Richardson, I just don't like the guy. Not great production in my opinion at Florida. It's not like Florida was bare of talent either.
Yeah,
Um,
they
yeah. And he's a tremendous athlete, but it just didn't seem to all come together on the actual field. And that's what I want to see. Like you want to see talent, but you also want to see production. And like it just wasn't there for Richardson. And I would argue he was I don't know, maybe fourth or fifth best quarterback in the SEC. What does that say about like when the gets to the pros?
He is, in my opinion, the quintessential what do you call it, prototype slash prospect. I mean, he blew up the combine. He was the number one combine star. I mean, there are some other good players that really did well, but he ran like a 4.4. He's a huge guy. He can throw it a mile, but that does not reflect on. It's not reflected on the tape. Like you said, he'll do a few great things, but he's made I mean, I watched some of his tape. He made some terrible throws.
Yeah.
And I just wonder. So, but do you want to pass on a player who has can possibly be great? I think he has that potential to be great, but you're going to have to be patient with that, and that's a huge risk.
Yeah.
How many quarterbacks? I mean, I can promise you, out of these 4 quarterbacks, only 2 of them are going to be good. I guarantee you 2 will be busts.
I won't argue that. I would maybe even just go one being really good. The other 3 could really,
And I wouldn't be surprised by that at all either, because
yeah.
if you go look through the history of the draft, on average, there's probably 3 quarterbacks picked every draft, and in first round, so that's 30 quarterbacks in the last 10 years. And a lot of the quarterbacks don't go round 1, so it's a very, very hard position to play, and the risk factor of making it past 4 or 5 years and being a starter is, the bust factor is very, very high.
Exactly. Well, let's finish up on the 10th pick, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. They got this pick from New Orleans. Who do you like there for them?
This is a guy who I think has got an incredibly high ceiling, Tyree Wilson. I believe he's Texas Tech or something like that. But he broke his foot, but I was watching him just lifting and just around his teammates. He reminds me and looks just like, I'm not saying he'll be anywhere near as good as Julius Peppers, but he's got the same frame, very lengthy. He is just a big man and he moves very well. But again, he's got some bust factor as well, but he will be drafted high. I think he will be drafted top 10. Will definitely be top 15. If he fell outside the top 15, I'd be very surprised. And it may be just because his foot is hurt, but he's got a really high ceiling. He's one of those guys who I think teams are going to fall in love with, and he's got the potential to be like one of those guys that get between 10 and 15 sacks every year.
Yeah, he has a huge ceiling, in my opinion, higher than Miles Murphy, but also a lower floor too. He could bust, but
yeah,
I will say I like this pick for the Eagles. It's kind of almost like a luxury pick. You went to the Super Bowl. I mean, pass rushers are a premium. That's one of the, besides quarterback, I mean, one of the key positions in the league. I will say though, since this is kind of a luxury pick for him, I could see them go with the Texas running back, Robinson.
I was thinking that a lot too, and I can't figure, like you said, you just don't see running backs going high anymore. And I mean, I have him as basically a top 3 player in the entire draft.
Yeah, I agree.
Incredibly, I mean, he's going to make a difference. He might be all pro his rookie year. But I just have a really hard time projecting where he'll go.
No, I agree. I've never been I've been adamant about not picking running backs in the first round. I'm bigger on value and logic. But this is one of those situations that fall outside that. I mean the Eagles are a stacked team. I mean, and Miles Sanders with the Panthers right now. And Robinson's a freak. He's going to be a stud. And you put him behind that Eagles offensive line. I mean, Jalen Hurts quarterback. I mean, that would be a deadly duo right there.
I think I put Wilson there over the Robinson running back simply because, it's a strong running back class this draft. I think there's literally 10 starters in fantasy. I mean, for this draft that will translate even to fantasy football. You're going to see a good class of guys come out there. I think there'll be about 4 or 5 running backs close to 1,000 yards this year. And pass rushers are premium. And the Eagles did get hurt in free agency, and they got some older players. And some contract situations to figure out here. So I think you want to get some linemen that can get to the quarterback. And if you're a contender and want to stay a contender, you got to address the line.
No, you're absolutely right. I might disagree and take the Texas running back, but I'm not in like a total disagreement in taking Wilson either, because I mean it's a needed position for the Eagles, or just anyone in the league. A dominant pass rusher is always welcome. Well, Grizz, we touched on the top 10 picks of the draft. We're right at probably around the 30-minute mark. Is there anything else you want to say before we mosey on?
We'll try to get to the next 10 picks next couple of days here. I may move around some things, but the top 10 is always the most fun. I mean, they're polarizing. And before we get off, what you guys should do, I think we text each other this, go back and look at the 2013 draft. Look at how horrendous it is. There was one player that stood out to me, and it was Lane Johnson, who's been really good. But every single player in the 2013 draft, the top 10, they're all bad. There's not. I mean, they're not even in the league anymore. I don't think maybe 1 or 2.
It was garbage.
So, I always say trade down if you can. If your scouts are good, you can get good players in rounds 2 and round 3. You don't have to draft a guy in round 2 if you don't need to.
No, I agree. Well, just for all of our fans out there, don't forget, we're right and you're wrong.
Right, got this.
That's right. Especially got this. See you next time.
All right. Adios, guys.
Yeah.